Here's a post from Auxilia Legion on Tumblr. She writes, "Understand that men and women are fundamentally the same. They were treated as such in our pre-civilization hunter-gatherer societies. The issue rests in the rise of imperialism around 12,000 years ago or earlier. As many civilizations have pillaged and colonized other tribes seeking to hold ownership over them and have executive control, men seek to have executive control over the resource women possess. As a class, we, women, generally have the ability to give birth and can be widely expected to have this ability at some point in our lives. Childbirth is a fundamental resource, necessary for the multi-generational survival of a group. Like imperialists, men imperialize upon women, the owners of the childbirth resource, in order to control it. In fact, for an imperial force to go out and oppress other tribes and societies, they must imperialize themselves, wherein the men imperialize upon women. They must wake up and go to sleep in imperialism. They must etch it into the folds of their brains and convince themselves this is the natural order of humanity. This imperialism is a patriarchy, where women are subdued and silenced in totality, their names barely kept in the records, all treated like a resource. To further the subjugation and harden the chains, they use rape, beating, economic exclusion, verbal violence, and many other forms to keep women below them. As such, for the past 12,000 years, men's very identities have molded themselves around the oppression of women. Men implicitly and explicitly know they do not have the childbearing, baby-feeding resource. They can only activate the former. This creates envy. Though men would seldom like to be impregnated and carry a child for themselves, the fact that the childbearing resource is in the body of an animate human, a woman, rather than belonging to men or available in an inanimate harvest is where the envy lives. The day when a man felt he wished for birth to be harvestable rather than blessed upon him, like the day he wished for food to be harvestable rather than for nature to bless it upon him, is the day the envy became perceivedly insurmountable. Envy causes insecurity, and insecurity causes vapidity. Vapidity harms the ego of which instilled into us long ago as single-celled organisms, as ego is the hand-in-hand with self-preservation. The ego is the end result of the identity, and a harmed ego is a harmed identity. Instead of to backtrack along the source of this harm, the men chose to overcompensate for their harmed identity. Instead of exist with a piece missing, and to realize the root of their bruised ego is the viewing of birth as a commodity to be harvested, they solidified birth's commodity status by lording themselves over women. Men live in a fake identity. Their concept of self is centered around women. However, instead of looking up to women, they look down upon us. They look upon women with disdain, apply pain, suffering, and create religions saying the creator of the universe intended this suffering to be so. They created a code of conduct for themselves, masculinity to compensate for lack of identity, and created it to be in opposition to whatever woman was. They created a code of conduct for women, femininity, and created it to embody subjugation and enslavement. They brainwashed us and themselves to believe femininity is inherent to womanhood and to believe masculinity is inherent to manhood. Open your eyes to the men who cry misandry, as you will see what they consider misandry is an attack on their identity, and their identity is misogyny. As such, it can only be reasonable to be misandristic, insofar as one's misandry is an attack on misogyny, and every branch of same.